Oh, okay. Everybody, I'm Danielle. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you to Nechama for arranging this, and Rachel and everybody. Everybody was amazing. I wasn't really sure how I fit into all of this. I'm really not a mikveh expert. I'm just a mikveh goer, a mikveh attender. The first time 2 years ago I was asked to speak about mikvahs, it was actually a very, very difficult speech for me to write. I really had to dig deep and really actually explore how I felt about the mikvah. It was something that I sort of got married and did and didn't really love and didn't really acknowledge that I didn't love going. And through really writing this speech, I really was able to fortify my connection to the mitzvah. And it's really been sort of a life-changing experience for me in the last 2.5 to 3 years since I really had to write this speech. So I thought a lot about the mitzvah of the mikvah and going to the mikvah and what does it mean to me? What does it mean to Hashem? Why do I go to the mikvah? How does it impact that marriage? How can I connect to the mitzvah of mikvah? And as I began my search for connecting, I read, I thought, I wrote, I realized very early on that everything I was reading was a little bit fluffy. It was very hashkafic. It talked about the beauty in marriage. It talked about keeping your relationship fresh and interesting. It talked about, a very pure and holy way to bring children into this world. And it talked about the reward you got for keeping the mitzvah and the reward your family would get for living in a home where, the laws of family purity were kept and held so sacredly. It was really hard to find actually any practical information on how a regular woman who goes to the mikveh actually deals with going to the mikveh. How does she practically overcome the challenges that present itself every month when we need to go to the mikveh? After, really thinking about this and letting it stew, I realized that all my thoughts on the mikveh experience were completely subjective. I only was able to think about the mikveh through my own lens because, due to different laws of modesty and sensitivity, it's really not a topic that nobody ever discussed. Outside of my college classes, it wasn't anything I discussed with my friends I don't have sisters, but with sister-in-laws. It wasn't something that came up on the park bench. How do you feel about going to the mikveh? Nobody spoke about it. And for the first time, I realized that maybe no one else felt how I feel. Maybe these negative feelings that I had about going to the mikveh, the process of getting there, maybe I was alone. Maybe I wasn't alone. Maybe everybody felt like me. But I literally had no idea because I had never spoken to anybody else about it. So the only natural next step for me, because I'm just a wild extrovert and, need to share everything that I feel, was to step out of my comfort zone because although I'm a sharer, sharing about a topic which is so, really shrouded in secrecy and modesty and sensitivity was really out of my comfort zone. I reached out and I put out a questionnaire to hundreds and hundreds of women to answer about the mikveh, questions that I had about the mikveh, and it was incredibly awkward. And I was shocked that every person that I sent the questionnaire to, which wasn't on a platform, it wasn't on a social media place, it was people that I knew personally, one-on-one in an email or WhatsApp form, every single person answered. Every single person was really happy to finally open up about their experience about going to the mikveh. These were the questions I asked, and I'm going to take a little pause in between each one so that you can sort of take a second to sort of think about what your answer would be. So the questions were, do you enjoy the mitzvah of going to the mikveh? What do you find difficult? How do you connect to the mitzvah of going to the mikveh? Do you find value in the mitzvah? And lastly, does going to the mikveh bring you closer to Hashem? So I answered all these questions myself before I got back any other answers because I really wanted to make sure that my thoughts were my own and unbiased. And once I received answers from so many women, Haredi women, American Yeshivish women, modern women, Sioni women, newly married women, unaffiliated women, veterans, mikveh goers, young grandmothers, Sephardi women, Ashkenazi women, I really tried to reach out to women from all walks of life. Across the board, the answers were more similar than different. Do you enjoy the mitzvah itself? No. What do you find difficult? These answers were all over the place and nobody's answers were the same. Everybody found difficulty in different area and different places, different parts of the bedikas, hafseks, harchakos, all different things. Do you like going to the mikveh? So this was very interesting. In America, yes. In Israel, it's fine, or it's okay, or where else should I go? I just do it. How do you connect to the mitzvah? Almost nobody answered. I don't know, it's hard. I just go. Do you find value in the mitzvah? So actually this one got really 50-50. Yes, I found value. And then they expanded into exactly how they found value. No, I don't find value. I do it because my mother did it. Does this mitzvah bring you closer to Hashem? So most of these answers were no. It doesn't, I don't get it. I don't understand it. It brings me closer to my husband. I understand that relationship. I don't necessarily know that it brings me closer to Hashem. And then there was a few women that, yes, it brings me closer to Hashem. I find, the immersion in the water a very spiritual experience. It's a place where I daven. But overall, there was really no answer to that question. And my mind was blown. A mitzvah that almost every single woman partakes in their own way, on their own level. And not one woman, including myself, could come up with a genuine answer of how the performance of this mitzvah brings us closer to Hashem. I could not believe it. So how did I get to this point where I am today, where I stand here 3 years later, more connected to the mitzvah than I was 3 years ago when I first had to start thinking about this? How do we learn to love a mitzvah that's frankly just really, really hard and really sometimes unpleasant and uncomfortable? So that's the question that I'm basically going to try to answer for you. Before we can even try to feel closer to Hashem through that mitzvah of going to the mikvah, I think first it was important to identify what we were going through and where the difficulties and the obstacles were. So for me, it's broken down really simply. We become unclean, are identified as impure, boom, right away, psychological obstacle. Next, we have to deal with changing the sheets. We have to deal with all the harchakos, separating beds, no passing, no touching, no singing, no hugging, no sitting on the same bench, no sharing food, whatever level of harchakos you keep, boom, obstacle. Next, doing all of that stuff secretly so that people around you don't notice, boom, obstacle. Next up, badikas, remembering to make them, boom, obstacle. Dealing with the discomfort that badikas cause many women, boom, another obstacle. Uncertainty strikes, seek out guidance by showing someone something we'd really rather not show, huge obstacle. All of this culminates in the final obstacle, which is the Yom HaTfilah, the day you have to go to the mikveh, the day we must go and immerse ourselves in water to achieve this actual purification. That day is filled, it's one giant obstacle filled with millions of obstacles. When I began this journey exploring how to connect, I thought for sure, women who had older children would have an easier time connecting to the mikveh because it would be easier for them to get to the mikveh. In my mind, once a woman was past the childbearing, nursing stages of her life, Nita would become routine. The harchakos would get easier. There would be a more steady cycle, a natural ebb and flow. She wouldn't have to deal with the awkward babysitter encounters because her husband was at work late or out of town when she needed to go to the mikveh. She wouldn't have to leave her child's parents' night early to go to the mikveh. And all around, it would just be easier for her to get out of the house and do what she needed to do. Then I spoke to women who have children a bit older than I am, who are in different stages of life, and their children are not yet married. They don't need babysitters anymore. So they can leave the house during bath time once in a while, but they have a whole other set of obstacles because with built-in babysitters also comes questions. Mommy, where are you going? Why is your hair wet? But it's Friday night. What do you mean you're going out for a walk? Wait, you got a manicure but didn't get nail polish? And these aren't the only categories of women. There's the newly married girls who told their mother-in-law they would come for Shabbos, and then all of a sudden, oops, they have to go to the mikveh Friday night. Now what? Now they're stuck at their in-laws and they have to go to the mikveh and they're mortified. There's like the really young couples that are home with the baby and they're studying for finals and their baby hasn't slept all day and the husband has to go to work and she's studying for finals and they don't have a babysitter. And she doesn't want to call her mother and tell her mother she has to go to the mikveh tonight. And then there's the woman whose children are married. She's a young grandmother, and she's worried about whether she's going to run into her daughter or daughter-in-law at the mikveh. There's the categories that age isn't even related to. The times when you crave a hug or a pat on the back from the person you feel most connected to in this world, and you can't receive anything for it. These times come at our most joyous times, like childbirth, and our most tragic times, like during loss. It's times when words can't do what a hug or a squeeze can accomplish, and these are all obstacles. These are real challenges that every woman that goes to the mikveh faces at some point or another in her mikveh going years, and unfortunately, there's no real way to get rid of these obstacles. These obstacles exist. So we have to find a way to overcome them and connect beyond, even with, not embrace the obstacles, but find a way to connect through the obstacles. The obstacles themselves look and feel different to every single woman, right? For some women, it's the day of the mikveh that's the hardest. For some women, it's the harchakos that weigh on them. For others, it's the bedika. We're all faced with challenges related to this mitzvah. No one prepares us for these. I wasn't prepared for these obstacles. They're not to be unexpected, or they are expected, and then you prepare for them and you adjust to them, and then all of a sudden, boom, new stage of life, brand new set of obstacles. So we don't really know what to do, and we don't really know that we're not alone. Our feelings, our anxiety, our frustration, annoyance, whatever emotions you're left with, leaves us little room to feel connected to other people. Even though you're not alone, nobody's talking about it. So you don't know. You don't know how to connect to the mitzvah because you can't even connect to another human being and relate to what you're going through. So how are we supposed to feel closer to Hashem through this mitzvah when we feel so alone, or when it feels so hard? How can we love something that at times feels like such a source of aggravation? How can I, someone who can't quote Rashis or Rambams or whatever, someone who truthfully doesn't remember half the sources her teachers and seminaries taught her, go to the mikvah as a regular woman, just like every one of you sitting in this room? And how can I get the most out of that mikvah experience? And how can I truly connect to Hashem through this huge, beautiful mitzvah? So all of this thinking and all of these questions made me sit down and really, really it took me a few months to really think about this and go to the mikveh every time and really work on it and come up with a plan. And I came up with two separate answers. Not really solutions. These are just almost like troubleshooting tips to help you get through these obstacles and still have the energy to find a way to feel connected. So the first answer is the easy, simple answer. Knowing that you're not alone. You're not alone doesn't take away the obstacles, but it takes away that feeling of, am I doing something wrong? Why is this so hard for me? Why does everybody else seem to do it? It takes away that element of guilt, or maybe a place in your mind where you could feel like a failure because you're not connecting. You're not alone. These obstacles, everybody deals with some of them in their own way at their own time, and you are not alone. We may perform the mitzvah privately, modestly, and quietly, but we are all united in one very simple fact. We all go to the mikveh. We all care about going to the mikveh, and we all do it time and time again, despite how difficult it may be. So my first solution, really idea more than solution, is to do whatever you can to make this process easier for you, which is really just, it is the simple answer. Pick one friend, pick one sister, pick a parent, pick anybody you can who's in your inner circle, somebody who you trust, somebody who you respect. Make a code word. This is my code word. On this day of the week, I say this word. Please don't ask me questions. Just come over. Just watch my children if I need. Just pick up the babysitter. Do whatever needs to be done. Help me out. And you use that code word, and I'll come help you out. Go out of your way to find a mikveh where you feel most comfortable. For some women, that's going to be the cleanest mikveh. For some women, that's going to be the closest mikveh. For some women, that's going to be the mikveh with the latest hours, or the mikveh that only takes appointments. Invest in yourself. Go out of the way, even if you have to drive a little farther, to find a mikveh that makes the process more comfortable for you. Another solution is really treat yourself that day. I actually heard this from a bunch of women that really felt better about the mitzvah. They only get pedicures the day after the mikveh. The night of the mikveh, they never cook dinner. They order dinner. That is dinner night in, whatever they want, no matter the cost. They do not make dinner. They order dinner for them and their family. Another person puts on a full face of makeup, meets her husband. They go out for a beautiful dinner, fancy dinner. They go to the city once a month. They have a beautiful dinner, and then they come home. Do whatever your treat is for you. You save that for the mikveh day. There are ways to make the practical part of going to the mikveh easier, maybe not simpler, but ways to lift the heavy burden that it can sometimes feel like. Take the time to really think about this and find what works for you. Hopefully, if the obstacles weigh less on us, we can actually take the time that day to focus on the mitzvah. That leads to our second answer. This is not the easy answer. This is the answer that I really had to dig deep for, that ultimately worked for me. It might not be the answer that works for you. This is the spiritual answer that works for me and helps me connect to Hashem. Comes down to Emunah, faith and belief. Emunah in Hashem and His Torah, of course, but it's more than that for me. It's faith in our history and faith in our heritage. Faith in the long line of holy women that each one of us comes from. Belief that my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and all the mothers before them that understood the beauty and significance of this mitzvah in such a deep and real way that here we are thousands of years later overcoming obstacles that look the same, that look different as them, to perform the same rituals they performed. The words they said, we said. The measures of purification they They took, we take. Connect to Hashem by connecting to the rituals that our mothers have passed down to us from generation to generation, all the way from Sarah Emunah. We, all of us, women who have decided that for some reason we can't fully identify, but somewhere in our subconscious, we decided that this mitzvah is important enough for us to continue to put up with all these obstacles month after month. Have faith in your inner belief. Have faith in that little voice that pushes us to do this mitzvah. There's no peer pressure because no one will know if you don't go. There's no Rebbitzin calling you every month to check in. Are you going to the mikveh? There's nobody checking to see whether you fudge the results of your b'dika. Somehow, this huge mitzvah that has zero accountability from any outside source has its grip on us. Why? Because we believe. Because somewhere deep down, we believe that this mitzvah is important. Connect to Hashem by connecting to yourself. Something deep inside of you is pushing you to go every month. Is it fear of punishment? No, because if we don't go, we're not really the ones that are going to get punished. Amen. We go purely out of self-motivation. It's just buried so deep down and covered up by all the things and obstacles we have to do that it's so hard to access that belief. For me, thinking about the long line of women that came before us, that said the same words I say, that brought me into this world in the same holy way I bring my own children into this world, that overcame the obstacles they faced in their own generations, most likely walked in their snow up to their knees with no shoes, dipped in frozen water, gives me chills. I feel the connection and cannot help but thank Hashem for the privilege to perform this mitzvah the way they all performed it. Mitzvahs are like relationships. All relationships, like mitzvahs, require work. But for some of them, the work comes more easily than it does for others. We work more readily to connect on our relationships with spouses, children, and friends, just like the mitzvahs of lighting Shabbos candles, saying Moda'ani, and Shema. Other relationships, like mitzvahs, require a lot more effort, like in-law relationships, a difficult teacher, a bad neighbor. These are relationships that you need to mindfully and intentionally invest in. Why? They're a part of your life and they always will be. How? The only way to improve any relationship and create any sort of connection is by looking inward and working on yourself. You will then be rewarded with a deeper connection. It's the same for the mikvah. It's the mother-in-law of all mitzvahs, literally and figuratively. Hear me out. Without it, we would not have the beautiful reason to go to the mikveh that we have, our husbands, but it's hard on us. It's awkward sometimes. It's not always comfortable. Sometimes could be a little bit difficult. However, ultimately, what we put in is what we will get out of it. So now, think about why are you going? Think about the women that came before you and what they went through to bring you into this world in the holiest possible way. Think about the fact that when you go to the mikveh, you're saying the same words and most likely davening the same tefillos as Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. Just like the women that came before us, we're davening for the same shalom bayis, health, parnasa, clarity in raising our children, and of course the Beis HaMikdash. We're so far removed from the holiness of these great women. But on the day of the tefillah, when you have gone through all the measures that the women before us took also, and you emerge purified from those waters, you're no different than Sarah Emunah. You have achieved the same level of purity that the Nashim Tzidkanios before you achieved. The world can change over thousands of years. We look different, the mikvahs look different, but the mitzvah of mikvah, that's constant. It's forever. And we are the link connecting the women of our past to the daughters of our future. So thank you. I want to really thank you for having me on here tonight, because every time I go through this and I go through these thoughts, it fortifies my own emunah, my own belief, and my own connection to the generations that came before us. We're the link in the chain. Us, it's here today. And when we go to the mikveh, every time we go, we're fortifying that link. In the merit of all the beautiful women here and the amazing speakers before me and the amazing women speaking after me, I really hope that we should all be blessed with the continuity of many more pure, holy, healthy, and Torahic generations. And we all be zochet to Mashiach tzidkenu b'mehera b'yameinu amen. Thank you so much for having me tonight.